They read, they talk to other people, and then they pop out a document. Boom! Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and they start sending it around. And that's where it goes south. Because documents don't carry fire in the belly. People do. If you want your change to spread, you have to figure out a way for people to carry it face to face, voice to voice. They need to share air. Now, if you have no budget, we had no budget, that means you have to come up with something that's so compelling that people will want to talk to other people about it. And if you think about most of the change initiatives you're involved in, we're going to cut costs. The way that we're going to do that is that we've decided to implement a new strategic tracking system, which is going to use spreadsheets going across the silos of the org. It's like, right? I mean, nobody wants to talk about that. What do they want to talk about? Well, there's good news about working with professionals. They do want to talk about the mission of their organization. They really do. But that's what they want to talk about. And so the question is, how do you ground your change initiative in the core essence of what your organization is about? For us at the World Bank, here was our exciting conversation. It was, what would it be like if our beneficiaries, the poor, had access to our knowledge and expertise when they needed it in a form that worked for them? That's it. That's what people, what you want is you want a conversation to spread, not an answer. If you have an elevator speech, if you have a phrase, if you have a mantra, if you have a tagline, it's not going to work because it's an answer. You want a question to spread. What can I use the Apple for? How can I make my content available to my beneficiaries? That's something, that's a journey that someone can go on and something they'll be excited about going on. All right, I'm not going to go through all these now because I want to go back to this idea of rapid, widespread engagement and connecting it to communicating so people get it and spread it. There's a communication model that all of us use by default, by assumption, and it doesn't work when it comes to making change spread. I used it myself many times. I was taught it, and you were probably taught it. In fact, they teach it in communication and marketing in universities. It was created in the 1940s. It was published in the 1960s by Bell Labs. It's called the Shannon and Weaver model. Anybody in the room ever heard of Shannon and Weaver's model of communication? One person. It's been around. It's been called the mother of all models when it comes to communication. Here, I'm going to show you what the model is formally, but then I'm going to show you how it works in our minds, and then I'll show you what's wrong with it and what we can do about it. Basically, I can't even read this, so I'm guessing that you're having a hard time too, so I'll just do my hands with it. You have an information source. That information source creates a message. That message goes through a media. While it's being transmitted, there's noise in the system that plays on that message. It reaches a receiver, it's decoded, turned into another message, and on a good day, it reaches the recipient and understanding takes place. The message gets through. That model of communication is outstanding for transactions. It made the internet possible. It makes computers possible. It is the binary model for communication. But human beings do not transact meaning. Meaning doesn't come out of me and go into you. We create it together. If this were true for human beings, we could lock ourselves in a library with a thermos of coffee and come out with a graduate degree, 20 hours later. But we can't, and we don't. We need other students, we need other teachers. Communication is interactive. In just a little while, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to start letting you ask me questions. That's necessary. In fact, there's a great guy, Etienne Wenger. He was one of the people who originated the term communities of practice. And he studies social learning. How do people learn together? And he's come up with 4 different attributes for the way people learn together. And if your business is about communicating, you need to know these 4 because they make a huge difference in the effectiveness of the communications you create. One is that horizontal learning, peer-to-peer learning, trumps vertical learning. You need both. So don't mistake me for saying vertical learning should go away, because I'm absolutely not. You need both, but more action happens peer-to-peer than student to teacher. And the reason is because peer-to-peer we push against each other. We talk openly and honest with each other. We challenge each other, and we don't often student to teacher. Student to teacher is more of a one-way flow. Peer-to-peer is interactive. Second, today, nobody owns the puzzle. Everybody has a piece of it. 50 years ago, it was possible to read every magazine in your domain, in your area of expertise. It's no longer possible. There's too much information out there. So no one person is running everything. Everybody is running a little piece of everything. And that's really important. So even if you're the CIO, even if you're the CEO, you don't own it all. You just own that perspective. Now it's extremely valuable, so I'm not diminishing it. I'm just saying that you don't own the whole puzzle. Everybody who's contributing to it. And when I say contributing, I mean everybody who's in relationship, including detractors, competitors. I'm talking about the whole web, the big connection. So, first one is that, what did I say? Was it horizontal? Was it the, I get them out of order. Horizontal trumps vertical, and the second one is no one owns the puzzle, everybody just owns a piece of it. Third one, everybody has a unique set of experience that allows them to have a unique perception and contribution. So, I have a degree in math. I did street theater for 10 years. I've worked with change leaders all over the world. I have a 12-year-old son. I live in Bethesda near Glen Echo. You know, you're starting to see that after a while, I'm probably the only one in the room who can say these things. But the same thing is true for every one of you. I could do the exact same thing, and I could say, I could show how you are unique. The same thing is true for everybody. Everybody's got a unique set of circumstances and experience that allows them to contribute differently. If you remember, the fourth one is, knowledge sharing and participation is voluntary. It's voluntary. Doesn't matter if you're paying someone even large sums of money. If they want to hide something, they can. If they want to pull back in their participation, they can. So the only way that you can get people to really go all out and participate in something is if they want to. They have to be motivated to participate. And the only way you can get them to be motivated is to speak to their needs and concerns, period. So that's what A.T. Wenger says are the 4 qualities of what he calls social learning systems. And that's what this is all about. It's about how human beings think and behave and learn together. So, this is not what it's all about. What does this look like in day-to-day practice? It looks like this. We have a change initiative. It's coming out of the Vice President's office. Let's go talk to the Vice President. He's the source. He'll tell us what the 4 bullet points are that we have to get right. Then we'll craft the message. We'll take the message and we'll put it into media. We'll create emails, newsletters, town halls, web mats, posters, ballpoint pens. We'll send all this stuff out through the system. People will come and attend our events. They'll open up our emails. They'll read our newsletters. There'll be all this interference in the system because they'll be thinking about the fact that their cat died last week, or they're not digesting their breakfast well, or their son's got to go to the doctor's this afternoon, or there's 16 other initiatives they're being told they have. That's the noise, right? But on a good day, they'll actually open our newsletter, read our email, attend our town hall. There'll be a moment of clarity when they'll actually listen to what we're saying, and they'll get it, and we will have arrived. Communication will be transmitted. That's the thinking that betrays this model, and it's wrong. That's not how people learn. The way people learn is by bumping up against each other, pushing and pulling. It's messy, it's iterative, and you can't even guarantee what they're going to get out of it. I mean, I remember walking into a room once where a CIO in an organization where I was an employee was hunched over a table, and he was saying, "Nobody will lose their jobs." And you just knew heads were rolling. You just knew it. It was like in the air, right? My brain didn't even, my cortex didn't even have to fire. I mean, it was like, you know, some animal part of me gets it, you know? So think about that. He's trying to communicate. What's he trying to communicate? Well, what he's crafted is nobody will lose their jobs. Probably what he wants is he wants the people in that room to keep working, to feel safe, but everything about him is saying something else. He doesn't have control. We're all reading him based on our life experience, and that is happening right now. It never stops. It never stops. People are listening to you through their own filters, their own concerns. They're not in your head, and they never will be. So this idea that you can craft something and toss it out, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or a dog and pony show or a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, and that people are going to get it, is out and out wrong unless it's a transaction. What's an example of a transaction? How do I fix my lawnmower? That's a transaction. Even how do I build a Boeing 777 is actually a transaction. It's complicated, but there are rules to doing it. You can assemble it, and if you follow those rules, when you're done, you'll have a Boeing 777. But how do I share knowledge when I get off the plane with somebody I haven't met in a circumstance that hasn't developed yet is not a transaction. How do I represent my organization when you know what hits the fan is not a transaction? How do I change our culture? How do I improve the way we work? How do I do a better job of making sure our core mission is being acted upon in every circumstance? None of those are transactions. Those are all complicated situations where the individual involved is going to have to put it together in their own mind, suss out what's going on, and choose a behavior in a circumstance that nobody knows what it is until it happens. And that requires that that human being know what they're supposed to do. They have to have assembled some meaning inside themselves. They can't just be reciting from what their manager told them in a meeting. They have to get it in here, and then they have to choose the right behavior in those circumstances. And the only way they're going to know it is if they have that chance to push against it, to think about it with somebody, to say what they honestly feel about it. There's a name for that, and it's called social construction. There's a whole school of thought that's studying this in the last 40 years. Social construction is a fancy way of saying we build meaning together. We construct it together. Socialists together, construct it as build it. So I throw out an idea, you throw it back to me. Maybe what you throw back to me is you reject my idea, or maybe you like a piece of it but not another part of it. Or maybe you say something altogether different. We go back and forth like that, and we end up with a common experience that allows us both to go forward with our lives. That's social construction. Now there's some interesting elements of social construction. One is the way we come to understand our world only happens in relationship. We have to be together. Think about your relationship with your parents or your primary caregivers. You had to be with them. We don't grow babies in tanks. You have to touch them. You have to hold them. You have to have intimate conversations with each other. That's a good metaphor for how we get through life. We do that in schools. We do that in the workplace. We do it everywhere. And when you have executives who refuse to talk to the people, to their subordinates, who don't know what they're thinking, don't know what they're saying, you have a major bad situation on your hands. And that's what I encounter in 90% of the organizations I go into. You have executives, or maybe they're not at the top, they might be at the side somewhere, who are not rubbing elbows with the people who have to play the game with them. And they're isolating. And when that isolation happens, you lose the social construction, and you get back into jettisoning documents at people. Second principle, the world doesn't require that we interpret it in any particular way. Have you ever had someone stand up and they put like a spreadsheet on the wall and they say, the spreadsheet speaks for itself, or the meaning is obvious, or, now I have a math degree. My favorite line in all the math textbooks was, clearly we see that. You know, it is obvious that. I mean, I remember looking at those calculus books and going, help me out here, you know. No, clearly we don't